especially Jen, Megan, Tiffany, Jordan. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. You know, it means a lot to me with this pandemic going on. With so much uncertainty, we get to see each other. That's number one, and network in a different way. Thank you so much for making it happen. I thought it won't because of uncertainty. The event will get canceled and we won't get to do it. But I'm so glad we're doing this. Let's begin. I've been volunteering at Women Who Code, past 2 months, and I'm also part of Pakistani Women in Computing. And this is a little bit about me. I actually graduated from SMU just recently. I did data science professional certificate program, and I'm originally from East Coast. I did my undergrad and graduate studies from New Jersey City University, and I'm now part of Pakistani Women in Computing. This is more like international women who want to connect and who want to learn in a professional networking groups. So I thought, just to introduce this group, it would be better to do it with Women Who Code, because Women Who Code is very big on networking, and it actually grow you as a tech person. So I actually, if you go on Medium, you can also learn more about it, or if you have a question, you can ask me afterwards, but let's get started. If you want to connect with me, learn, grow, you can reach me at LinkedIn, Twitter, or Instagram. And so something that, our topic for today is, it's interview for data analysts, and something that I'm also going through. As being a data analyst, I went through so many trials and errors, and I have came across so many beneficial information for others who are on this boat. I feel your pain. I know what you're going through. So something that I, it's Amy is another, TED talk that you can always go online and take a look at it. So what I liked about her was, how we go for an interview and how we get so nervous, how our blood is rushing, and we can't seem to get across our point. So something that she mentioned, that she actually went through so much in her life that she says that, it's a very famous quote that she did: fake it till you become it. So it's not fake it till you make it. It's something else. It's totally different. Because, you're actually putting your hard work. It's not you're faking it. You're actually putting your hard work to it. So the basic reason why I put this, because every time I go for a data analyst interview, I actually practice this. I actually do make a pose. It gives me a boost of confidence. Believe it or not, if you ever go for an interview, try this. It's actually try any pose, like a Superman pose, Wonder Woman pose, whatever whatever superhero that you have in your mind, but it works. It actually does work. It gives you a different kind of boost that you want to, start talking to the person that's interviewing you. Another thing, that before you even go for interview with my data science bootcamp, I had study buddies, and it was Tamika and Sindhu. So we would share ideas, we would collaborate, we would join networks. So that's how we started joining Women Who Code. We wanted to learn more about data science, and we wanted to see like if there are women out there struggling, if they what was their experience as far as finding job, because the key is networking, and this is the only way you can, you know, like get to know what trials and error they went through, how did they started, what did they do, like, you know, to wherever they are right now. So for us, like I thought this was a great platform. So I started networking with so many women in Women Who Code, and I started learning. It actually gave me a confident level. It actually boosted my confident level that I wanted to, what I exactly do I wanted to do after I'm done with my boot camp. So I think it's great if you have a study buddy. You guys can share ideas. You can tell each other, hey, this is the app I'm using to practice Python, to practice SQL, to practice whatever other languages are out there. So I think it's a great way to increase your knowledge. And something that an article that I read about women in tech, you know, like when they are at workplace, 26% of computing related jobs are held by women, which is very good. Um, you know, like there are always pros and cons. I have the plus and the negative points of it. 48% of women in STEM jobs report discrimination in the recruitment and hiring process. It really depends, you know, like the level of study that you have. It really depends, you know, like the recruiter that you when you get a recruiter, you have to look at their reviews as well before you even pursue, like, you know, you want to go that route. So you want to make sure that your recruiters have good rating. And another thing on resumes, something that I would highly suggest is when you have any type of language on your resume, whether it's Python, SQL, Tableau, AWS, or any other languages that you have on the resume, make sure you know those languages. Because when you go for the interview, they're going to ask you everything about SQL. They're going to ask you everything about Python and everything about Tableau. So if you just put, for instance, I don't know Power BI, and I just took online class, just one class, and I put it on my resume. And they asked me questions, and I'm gonna get stuck, you know. So you just don't want to get embarrassed, but while giving interviews. So don't put extra stuff that you don't know. So make sure that the skills that you have, you know that you are better at it. The projects that you have on those, make sure you go over your projects, because sometimes it's a while that you went back to your projects. People tend to forget. And the education as well, make sure you have accurate information. So for instance, on your first page, you want to make sure that you have your skills, your projects. Make sure your projects on the first page, because this puts you on a higher level, because, you know, they see that you did projects and they see that you have certain skills. So they'll say, okay, you know, this is the person that I want to go for. And another thing is, the way I actually ended up giving interviews was through recruiters. I actually applied so many jobs, but the fact is that the jobs online might be expired, or I'm not sure what's going on, but through recruiters, since they have good relationship with the companies, I thought it was a better route for me to take. So I think it's better if you get to know your recruiter as well. Tell them what your skills are. Tell them what you have worked on. Tell them if you're part of any network. For instance, since I am part of a team lead of PWiC, when I tell them that, they think that I'm active. And if I tell them, hey, I also volunteer for Women Who Code, so they are more comfortable with that because they know that you are being active and you know what's happening nowadays. And also another thing that I would highly suggest is go on Medium and write an article just about anything, your experience, about your education, or any, like any languages that you learned. If you write that down and if you post it on LinkedIn, that's another way recruiters will reach out to you, companies will reach out to you. So when you're applying, I would suggest if you can start off with the startup companies. I think they're a great way of at least getting experience, and then apply via recruiters, LinkedIn, and of course networking. Because if you know different networking groups, and if you get to know so many members, they'll probably say, hey, I know this person is hiring, I'll forward your resume to them. So I think that's another great way for you to get a job. So another thing to prepare for the interview. So before you even, every job, every interview is different. So when you apply for data analyst position, you have to make sure you look at the requirements. You have to make sure that if they have certain terminology, you want to make sure you go over those terminologies. You want to make sure you read about the company, their value, culture, everything is on their website. You can also search it. You can find it on LinkedIn. You can find it, just about anywhere. You can find so much information about the company. So I think when you go for an interview, when you tell them about the company, the culture, the value, they love that fact that their mission statement, more information about the company. And especially like if you're a data analyst and what kind of problem they're facing, sometimes you'll find newspapers articles, and you'll tell them, hey, I came across this article and I feel like you guys are going through this. For instance, CVS, I feel like you guys are installing new kiosks and you're saving on budget. So something, they would love to hear about that. So that's something that you can throw in there. And your elevator pitch is number one. You want to make sure you basically memorize that. Every interview, your elevator pitch will be the same. This will be the number one. Like if you see any TED Talk, any famous people, they have the same elevator pitch over and over again. So why do you want to be a data analyst? Obviously, you love data. You've been researching about different companies. You love challenges. You love exploring, and you're confident in your decision. And you went ahead and got certificates. You are practicing, and you're ready to apply for jobs. So it's so important to be confident in your decision. You just don't want to push yourself and throw yourself out there and go for interviews. You have to talk to yourself that, okay, this is what you want to do. You want to make sure that you are aligned with yourself, because if you go for interviews, you're like, okay, I have experience in management. Since I have a different background, I came from a business major. it's totally different going into data. So for me, it was tough because business to data industry, like I had to learn new terminologies. I had to learn so many different languages. So it's very good that you have other major because it'll help you at your current job if it's finance or business. But it's so important for you to know, like data, what's current, what's going on with the data industry. So it's really important that you are up to date. So some of the technical questions that you may come across is, I have went through so many interviews. Honestly, when I Google questions, they do ask you similar questions over and over and over again. So you want to make sure that when you're going to if you put SQL, Python, Tableau, so you want to make sure the questions that you see online, just go one by one, because we did study, but we tend to forget. So these are some questions that you'll see, but there's much more to it. If you're senior level, mid-level, junior level, so the questions do vary. This is just a entry level. If they do ask you in SQL, they'll ask you so many questions. For me, even all the entry level jobs, they require SQL. Just some kind of practicing. If you go online, you can do extra, course online, and you can learn more about SQL, because I feel that the interviews that I went through, they do ask SQL questions again and again. So the major part of the interview is it's either whiteboarding or project. So, it really depends. The company will either give you a project or they'll either throw you at whiteboarding. So for data analyst, it's totally different. They'll give you questions. For instance, they'll give you some basic questions like write a query for SQL, or they'll for Python, they'll say, hey, write a code. How would you import libraries? What would you do? How would you create a graph? So some basic questions, but I know some companies do give you projects. One of the interview process that I'm going through, they're going to give me a project. So, and that project I will be presenting. So they'll give me a question and they want to make sure I know how to solve that question. And then at the final interview, they want to see if I can present, if I can solve a problem. So you want to make sure that be yourself. You want to make sure that you can solve a problem, because at first they want to see that you can be a great fit for the team, because you will be working with the team every day. You'll be reporting to your managers. So they want to make sure that you have good personality traits before you even come on board. So everything that you go through, so many interviews that you will be going through, trust me, it's going to be worth it. You are going to learn through them. And I feel that it's a process for me, that I am from a management major. So it's a little bit harder for me, because I have to learn again and again to keep current. So I feel that if I can do it, you guys can do it as well. And I guess this concludes our presentation. If you have any questions, feel free.
I got a question.
Sure.
And this could be related to data, being a data analyst, or just kind of interviews in general. What would you recommend people, what kind of questions should we ask of employers when we're looking for a job? What are some things we need to consider from them?
That's a great question. So at the end, they will ask you, do you have any questions for me? So they are trying to engage. They want to see what can you bring on board. So if you tell them, hey, what is day-to-day looks like at your, for this role, or you can ask, hey, this, for instance, COVID-19, what kind of challenges are you facing if it's a healthcare industry? So they love that fact that if you ask questions, please do ask questions. Thank you so much, Jordan, for this question.
We also have a question from chat. So when you mentioned projects, what kind of project should that be? Like a personal project or something from a past job, or does it matter?
Okay, so the projects that I listed on my resume are from data science certificate program. I'm not sure if you can put the company project that you worked on, but usually those projects are confidential. So you want to make sure that you get a permission first before you put it. But if you worked on a Kaggle project on your own, for instance, nowadays there's so many things that you can work on. If you did that on your own, you can put it on your resume. They'll be very impressed.
And just to pipe in on that as well, the recruiters especially, but like employers, if you list a project, they want to be able to look at it. So having it somewhere like your GitHub or someplace where it's accessible, so that they can actually see what your code is a great way to kind of help facilitate that interview process.
Right. And if you have a Tableau, like a public page as well, if you're using Tableau, you can also put that link on your resume and tell, recruiters or whoever is interviewing you to take a look at your projects, your viz that you have created as well.
We have another question. You mentioned putting projects on the first page of your resume, but there's a lot of advice given to job searchers that the resume should only be 1 page long. So what is your advice on, what's the appropriate length for a resume to be?
I had 1 page, nobody was reaching out to me, so I made it 2 page. I put lots of projects, I put lots of skills, the things that I already knew from my previous job to my current. So I think 2 page would be max. If you go 3 pages, they're gonna be like, oh, we're overwhelmed. But 2 page should be good. I'm getting good result, but I was also told to leave it as 1 page, but I went ahead and, increased to 2 pages.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I've had a similar experience in my job searches in the past that 2 pages seems to be the sweet spot.
Yeah.
So do you have any recommendations for places that you can go to practice or learn or otherwise improve your skills in between jobs?
Yes, I personally, what I did was I went on Udemy to practice, and there are different apps too that you can actually, like go and practice SQL. You can look back to W3 School as well. That's another great, way to look back to your terminologies as well. So I think the apps are great. And another thing is Udemy and YouTube, free resources are available online. So practice is the key, because if you stop practicing, you're going to get stuck on the interviews.
Here's another one from chat. So how do we prepare for technical interviews? And how do you answer a question if you don't know the answer?
You would try to do best as you can, because I also went through the same situation. Like, what I did was, honestly, I asked them a question. I'm like, I'm not sure, like, what you're trying to say. If you can give me an example. So they would give me an example. They're sure that you're pretty new to this. So like if you ask examples, I think they are okay giving example, and this gives you an idea to answer. For instance, I got stuck in SQL question ETL and like data warehouse. So I asked them, like, if you can give me an example. So I think it's very important if you engage, so you get to come up with some question, like just to gauge the interview.
And as she mentioned before on one of her previous slides, like it's way more about how your thinking process than it is what you actually like put down on the board or on the page or wherever it is. They want to know how you're processing and how you're getting through these problems. So be able to talk through every step. So when it says how to prepare for technical interview, practice with the questions, but practice talking it all the way through, explaining what you're doing as you're going through. And like Nisa said, you can involve your interviewer as well. Like when I interviewed with my boss, I got stuck on part of it and I just said, how would you handle this question? And he was like, okay, that's cheating. But then he did like, help me figure out some steps. So they also it's a great way to show those soft skills. It's a great way to show how you are going to communicate with them as a team.
Yeah, actually, you're right, Jordan, because if you engage with them, they want to know what your thought process is. They want to know how are you thinking, how are you solving the problem. So it is important.
Someone in chat says, I think questions found on a certificate exam are helpful because you're forced to think through the problem and provide an immediate answer. So that's good. Like Nisa said, I think like Udemy courses or I don't know, what's a good source, just throwing out to everyone, what's a good source for finding like practice questions like that?
W3 School, and there is Code War, where people usually practice SQL, Python. And again, my study group gave me all of that information. Tamika actually told me like, hey, this is what my friend told me, let's practice on that. So we would spend hours and hours practicing those questions. We would literally pull our hair because we didn't know how to solve those questions, and we would just take a break and come back to it. And then we would take a break and come back to it. So it's very important if you have a study buddy or like if you're part of a networking team, because you get to talk to them and you feel better. You don't get frustrated. So again, I think it's very important.
So it's pretty common for even entry-level jobs to have really excessive requirements, like masters or even PhDs degrees. So what are your thoughts on how to approach jobs that have those kinds of requirements?
I don't think all of the jobs are required PhD or masters for data science, data analyst. But for data science, you do need certain years of experience, and then you need masters. But I didn't apply for those. Honestly, like chances are you're not gonna get accepted for those jobs. I would say go step by step. That's the way to go. Get some experience, and then I think if you even skip a step, you would be totally lost.
Also, we have to remember, especially for tech jobs, when they're posting job postings, a lot of the time it's like an HR person who's writing the job listing and not actually someone who knows what the job is going to require. And so that they're just like, they post this huge list of like things that would be nice to have, like a unicorn list. That's like their like top candidate ideal. But the people who apply for those jobs are not going to ever be like a perfect fit. Also, like, it's statistically, women wait until they have matched 100% of what a job description is before they apply, whereas men only will apply to things when they only have like 70% of whatever the job listing is. So I think like really like we need to shoot our shot more often in that kind of a situation, especially if they're saying it's a junior role or it's an entry level role. We need to be more willing to apply to that kind of thing, even when we feel intimidated by the listing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I do agree with that take. Don't say no for them. Make them say no.
Mm-hmm.
But like you can't also view it that, places that are listing those kinds of requirements that are really excessive for the job, like requiring PhDs for entry-level positions, that they're doing you a favor by telling you what kind of place they are and what they value. And like, if that's what they expect for an entry-level position that's paying an entry-level salary, then they're probably not going to treat you well, and their expectations are completely out of line with what is reasonable.
True. I agree with you on that.
Are there any sites that you can go to actually practice with real data that's out there?
The website?
Yeah. Or just anywhere that you could find like actual data on anything to be able to practice instead of just like doing your own fake data or whatever you do.
Sure. So this is something that my friends and we've been practicing on this. You just have to create an account, and this actually gives you basically, if you're practicing SQL or if you're practicing, I had an option to choose whatever languages that I want to focus on. So I put Python, Tableau, and SQL. So they'll actually give you different kind of challenges that you can practice. Let's see if I can see questions. And then there are actually real-time people that are helping you throughout. If you're stuck with something, you can always, refer back, or you can ask questions. Let's see. So these are the questions that you will, this is actually a next level question, but entry level questions are very basic. They'll say, for instance, I have them written here. They'll be like, return employee record with max salary. That's something that I Googled personally, and I wrote down for my, like practice. And if you, whatever you feel comfortable, do that. If you feel comfortable practicing it here, you should practice here. If you feel like you want to write down certain questions and look them over and practice them online or via your phone app, actually I'll recommend another app that is also helpful. It's called Solo Learn. So this is another app that you can actually lay down on the bed and you can actually practice. So instead of, it's so typical, we look at social media. So instead of looking at social media, we can just turn on that app and start practicing, and you'll get better and better at those questions.
Awesome. We also have some suggestions in the chat room as well, about like where to find different sets of data as well. So Department of Energy, and somebody mentioned Google has released some data sets for public knowledge. And then some cities also have public published data sets. And then there's a website from Pinky that is datasetsearch.research.google.com. So that's good. And then I think we have a question as well. So she said she just started in data science, and in your opinion, what's the best industries for people seeking data science careers?
If you don't have the background experience, just like me, I thought I will be, when I was taking data science course, I thought I'm going into data science field. I started applying data science jobs, but I think if you start off with data analyst, if you don't have experience, but if you do have experience, then you can go a level up. But then I started applying. It's really, it's really when you dig deep, that where your knowledge is. So basically, if you're really good with your skill set, you can start off. You'll know immediately, okay, this is where you stand. But for me, I started off as data analyst.
So do data analysts work in a lot of different types of industries though, right?
Yes.
Like what are some examples?
So you can go into finance, you can go into healthcare, you can go into, depending on what kind of major you had previously, it'll be easier for you to connect to an industry. For instance, I had business major. I can either go into, CVS, it's retail / pharmaceutical. But I personally like working with healthcare industry, so that's what I'm taking that route. But it really depends on you. If you just want to keep it open, there's so many industry out there. There are so many remote job as well that you can apply to.
Are there any other questions? Maybe not.
And if you have any tips of interview, feel free to let us know.
Oh, I think we might have a question.
Okay.
Do you have any suggestions on how to develop a portfolio?
So I personally feel that you don't need a portfolio for a data analyst job, because if you have a Tableau, online page, or your GitHub, your LinkedIn up to date. But if you really want a portfolio, there are layout out there. So that's what I did. I actually Googled a layout for me, and I created mine. I'll show you. It's not that great, but still, something that if you're really interested. I actually had to see lots of videos because I'm not into creating a portfolio. This is more of a developer, and you can actually put your, link on resume, and you can also put your LinkedIn, GitHub resume. It's not that great, but I feel like the people that are into coding, they'll probably laugh at this portfolio.
Pinky said it is great. You're Wonder Woman, so.
That's what I heard.
What is it?
I wanted to just share a few things, like you said, share your tips. I recently took a SQL class and business analytics classes. And recently, it's been 1 year since I'm on a data analyst job. And like you said, everything that you said, I ditto that. And like Jennifer said, like we women, we want to make sure we have all the skills that is required on the, like that is listed on the job description. But actually, they are not looking for that. As long as you have 50 to 60%, just apply and they will just see your people skills and all the other attributes that you have, and they will select you.
Great, great. Thank you so much.
We have a, okay,
yeah,
go
so
ahead,
so we have a question here from chat. So what is your sense about how employers view non-traditional education resources like nano degrees or boot camps or things like that?
It's just how you word it. I actually did a boot camp as well. Some companies get thrown off that if you tell them that it's a boot camp rather than a semester, but I just put I just say certificate and they consider it okay. This is something that, you know, but it's really how you know, like if some companies like Texas Ranger, they didn't have any problem. Some companies won't have any problem because they know how hard you're working throughout the boot camp. But some companies, it is true that they'll get thrown off if you tell them, oh, you did a boot camp. But if you just write certificate, it's just how you word it, you know. But if you guys want to add to it.
So someone in chat has asked along the same lines, are boot camps or nano degrees more impressive than simply working on your own, or is it worth the money? So I went through a boot camp program because I knew that I needed the structure of like being in a classroom and, you know, having like peers who are also going through the same thing. I came from teaching before, so that gave me the structure that I needed to really get the skills that I needed in the right amount of time. I don't think that boot camps are necessary, but they are definitely helpful if you're like me and you benefit from having that extra structure. Saying that, it's also like you get as much out of it as you put in. So if you're the kind of person who goes and sits in class and then goes home and plays video games, you're not going to get anything out of it. But if you really dedicate yourself to the whole experience and really put in the time and make sure you're really studying, then that will could be very beneficial for you. But then again, we also have other women in this group who are totally self-taught and didn't go through any programs, and they're also have successful careers. So I think it really depends on how good you are at self-motivating, creating your own schedule, and finding those resources so that you can teach yourself.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I also just want to say one thing in favor of boot camps is that yes, it can be valuable to just have that credential and be able to, you know, say that like somebody has certified that you're like that you learned this and you know what you're talking about. And also boot camps like do actually put a lot of work into developing a network and being like and getting their students hired after they graduate. And so that sort of like the network and the people you meet there and the recruiting resources and all of that there's a lot of value in that in addition to just the learning, which you can theoretically do on your own.
That's true. There are a number of companies in the DFW area that I know were reaching out specifically to my boot camp because they've had success with their students previously. So that is another thing to consider, is that built-in network of a boot camp.
Yes, I agree with you because I actually went through SMU, and from there, I have created a network, and I think it's if you have studied the material, and if you know you have a solid ground, it doesn't matter if you know, like you said, that if you are going through a boot camp or if you're doing a self-study, but it really depends on your individual, that if you want to go through a boot camp or if you want to do a self-study. But again, if you learn something and then you know you have a solid ground.
Nisa, did you have any recommendations for data analyst certificates or courses other than the ones you may have already mentioned?
When you're going through, you know, when you're going through applying for a boot camp, you would just want to make sure that you research more thoroughly, because some boot camp will give you money back if you don't get a job, because they have great source of networking team that they'll make sure that you're connecting with companies. They'll make sure that you're going through interviews. So with SMU, I'm going through some interviews. They check up on me, and they make sure that, you know, whatever I need to polish, they'll make sure that, you know, I'm doing that. But there are free resources out there. So if you don't want to pay, you can also, you know, go through YouTube. I actually found, since COVID-19, there were some companies offering free, like 30 days trial. You guys can also Google that. That's another route you can take. A lot of companies, you know, like those are like international companies, and they're very helpful as well. I mentioned Udemy already, but there is so much information, free information out there that you can, you know, study from. And but it really depends on you. If you, for instance, I'm not the type of self-study person, so I also needed a structure. So that's why I took a boot camp. And if you're going through a boot camp, make sure you do a good research and make sure you know, or ask your peers, or ask a network like Women Who Code. I wish I was there earlier, so I could have asked a few questions. I asked them afterwards, but again, like, you know, there's always a good time to join that network and ask few girls. All of us have come from a different boot camp, and we can always answer, you know, give you an insight on SMU or Thankful or any other boot camp out there.
Nice. I think somebody way earlier asked about projects on GitHub. So what do you think about posting all of your projects or just the ones that you're proud of?
No, actually, you definitely need to post all of them. You need to make sure that you're practicing through your terminal, because some companies require that you know how to work with GitHub. For instance, my page, sorry about that. I have to go on my profile. Give me 1 second. So this is my page. You know, like, you just want to make sure that you have your best project. And when you have your projects, you want to make sure that it's listed correctly. Your repo, your README is thorough. You know, like, you have so much information, and the authors, whatever work that you have done, you want to make sure you put it out there. So any recruiters or any company, HR people, when they're looking at all of this, all of the work that you have done, or any projects that you're doing currently, they will love that fact that you have worked on it. And you have to be consistent on GitHub. Okay.
Did we miss any questions from anybody?
We got them all. Annie, I saw you posted that question again. She just answered it for us. And also, just so y'all are aware, this is recording, so it should be up on our YouTube channel later on this week.
So if you guys have any additional question, feel free to reach out to us. We are available, you know, like she said in the beginning, Slack channel, and we all have LinkedIn, we all have Twitter. So if you have any questions, reach out to us. We'll try our best to answer them all.
Nice. It looks like we have another question. So I guess we'll make this our last one unless there's any more flowing through. But what kind of statistics knowledge do the hiring teams expect from candidates?
So if you're applying entry level, they want to make sure that you know, if you have taken statistic class, you know, in your bachelor's degree. So if you know some terminology like regression analysis, they'll ask you all of that. They'll ask you, you know, like what is t-test? They'll ask you question out of nowhere sometime, but it's good to have this knowledge because there was a company that asked me that and I actually got stuck. So I actually practice SQL, I practice Tableau, I practice Python because I have all three of them on my resume, but I did not practice this part. So you just want to make sure you're you know, like you're in data science. So this is another thing that's part of us. And it's good to know. Just Google it, you'll refresh your memory.
Awesome. Well, that was all the questions we had. Definitely thank all of y'all for joining us this evening. And hopefully we'll see you on the next one. Thanks so much, Nisa, for all the information.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks to all of you for showing up.
Yes. Have a good evening.
You too.
The answers and everything. I'm new here, so thank you for everything. Very helpful.
Nice.
Thank you so much.